out actual offers on the properties too. So
Mm.
it's a
Okay.
2-page thing, and first page is kind of introducing ourselves and what we do. Second page is actually a purchase agreement where we've got their parcel number, the acreage, their county, state, and an actual offer price that we're offering them. Kind of a
Yeah.
one-page
So
purchase agreement, and sometimes people just sign it and mail it back to me.
Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
all right, Pete Reese, thanks for coming on the show all the way from Southern California. Land flipping extraordinaire, it sounds like. So really excited to sort of hear your backstory, kind of where you came from and how you got into what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Mike and Dan.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be on here and talk a little bit about land flipping or anything else real estate related, I guess, too. But
just anything in your life. I want to hear it all. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure we
absolutely.
can hear in person and all those boring details.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been in real estate for quite some time. I guess you could say I've been in real estate since the year 2000 when my wife and we bought our first home. Did pretty well on just because of dumb luck, and we tried to buy it right. Sold it a couple years later. Got the proceeds tax-free, thought this was great. So we kind of upgraded into another house, did well on that one after we fixed it up. Did some DIY type improvements myself, which in hindsight were really, really poor quality.
They all were when we first started.
Oh, yeah. That's how it has to start, though.
Yeah, my wife was telling me how great of a job I was doing, but I look at some of the pictures and I'm just embarrassed.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And then I started. We started getting into flipping homes, and it kind of went down that whole rabbit trail about 2004 to 2007, 8-ish, somewhere in there, until the real estate market crashed here in San Diego. And luckily, a couple years before that, I had gotten my broker's license, and I got it pretty much just so I could get the commission on the deals that we were buying to flip homes. But it actually worked out pretty well because it gave me kind of a fallback plan when the market crashed, and flipping homes, it really wasn't too much of a viable business model at that point. But then my wife suggested, hey, you should talk to the banks and see if you could start listing their properties. And I went down that whole thing and was an REO listing agent or listing broker for a number of years. And
Nice.
So those were the properties that were selling at the time, and it was great for the time. Not something I wanted to be in long term for sure. It's tough, dealing with all the people issues related to that. I mean, like when you get a property assignment, you get an email from one of these banks and they say, hey, new property assignment. Your first job is you have to go knock on the door of the house, see if it's occupied. And if it's occupied, then you have to negotiate with them for, cash for keys or something. So a lot of sad situations back then, kids answering the door and, it's like terrible. I still think about that kind of stuff, I dealt with it in the best possible way I could, but it was just kind of like you're put in the middle of this like really bad situation. But,
totally.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize they made you do the dirty work on that as the agent. I assumed they had like a bank like hit squad that would go out and do all that sort of stuff.
And maybe some of the brokers were smarter than me and had like a team built where they actually sent a team member out to do the stuff that they didn't want to do. But at the time, it was just me, and that was the worst part of it. And a lot of times people wouldn't answer the door, so you have to leave a note at the door, and some people just dragged out the process even further.
Totally.
Of course, yeah.
I can't imagine like scheduling showings and stuff as a broker when you have a situation and you were trying to be sensitive to the family too, like not be a jerk to them because obviously they're losing their home.
Yeah, really bad. And then I mean even down to the fact that when it came time, because then they start the eviction process if there was people still living in the home, and that process in California takes forever, and then. Then they'd post, the sheriff is going to show up on this date and time, and you have to show up as the broker, and you have to show, and the sheriffs show up as well. And some people just, even then, they were there and they had all their stuff in there when the sheriff showed up, and they knew, a couple weeks ahead of time when that was going to
Right.
happen. It's just like,
Oof.
I don't know, just a bad
Yeah.
situation. Maybe they had
Totally.
more to go or something,
Yeah.
but it was just a bad situation. So,
Yeah.
after but I was grateful for it in a way, because it kept the bills paid in a time when a lot of people in real estate were really struggling.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. It was good in that way. But I did learn about how things work from that side of things. How the banks sell properties and what their whole process is. So if it ever comes back to that, I'll have I'll have
You have some experience.
insider knowledge, I guess.
Yeah, right.
As an investor,
Yeah.
got into short sales for a little while, and then got kind of into another business, which ran with my wife for about 4 or 5 years. Then got the itch to get back into real estate investing, and stumbled into land investing, land flipping, land development, and that's been about 2 years now. And I just went all in, and been having a great time doing that, trying to scale this business as good as high as we can. So hopefully I'm
Yeah.
on track to do almost 4 million this year in revenue, and hopefully 10 million
You're
next
crushing
year.
it.
So,
Yeah. There you go. You're crushing it. Nice.
I like
So
that.
what spurred that switch from like single family homes, especially doing it like REO and short sale, to land? Like
mm,
that's a pretty drastic difference. And one of the things that we find is super common with investors, and honestly, we fall into this too because we're mostly residential investors, is taking that leap over to different asset types. It opens up a whole can of worms because you got to learn about the asset type. You got to learn how to find them. You got to learn how to value them. You got to learn how to sell them. I guess like what drew you to land specifically?
well, it was kind of interesting. I mean, I knew a lot of the basics about land, but I didn't know all the details and how the business model worked. I honestly just stumbled into some things, some anecdotes people were saying online, like, "Hey, I bought this property for 10,000 and I sold it for 30,000," and I was like, "Well, that's kind of cool. I would do
Yeah.
a bunch of
Yeah.
those,
Right.
and pretty low risk." And I don't know, I thought it was just interesting, and that just I took someone's course, I bought a course on it, and
Mm-hmm.
tried to learn everything I possibly could, and how to evaluate properties, all the different tools to use, everything associated with it. So I went in really deep, and I tried to really learn the model, tried to really learn how to evaluate these properties, because you're buying properties all over the country.
Mm.
It's rare that we ever see a property before we buy it, after we buy it, anywhere in the cycle.
Right.
So you got to get really good at evaluating properties from your computer, and building a team and some help locally that can help you evaluate some of these properties as well.
Interesting. So
I
you're
guess,
out virtual then.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So the thing about it was, I guess, jumping to that new asset class was just interesting to me, because I saw kind of how the business model worked, and that was intriguing to me. And I figured I could learn it quick enough to be up to speed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why I did
Okay.
it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. I know using it virtual as well, and that's
Yeah.
opens up a whole new challenge
Right.
because land is valued so differently in places like up here, Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho, where I can drive 5 minutes north of my house and I will be out of the city center, and there is nothing but land
Yeah.
everywhere. Versus like Orange County, or San Diego, the land is going to be a lot more sparse in terms of like usable land.
Right.
So
Right.
I guess when you like, do you target specific areas nationally,
Exactly.
or are there like, okay,
Yeah. So
so
what we'll do is, we'll first of all look at certain states and certain counties within those states, and try to get a feel for what the land market is like. Are there a lot of listings there? Are things actually selling? Is it an active market for land? Some areas,
Hmm.
there's tons of land, tons of listings, very few sales. So there's
Right.
kind of this, I don't know, almost a weird imbalance between what sellers are expecting and what buyers are expecting. So not a lot of transactions happen,
Hmm.
but I really look for the areas where land is actually moving. Like there's an active market. Things are, pretty well defined. Like, a 10-acre property goes for 3,000 an acre or something like that.
Right.
Mhm.
So when we can see the activity, that's a really good start. Most of the areas that we mail to, and we generate everything with direct mail.
How
And I can get
fascinating.
into
Okay.
that too, specifically, what type of direct mail we do. But we mail to areas where, pretty much an hour to 2 hours outside of like a major metropolitan area, or at least a larger metropolitan area, kind of a circumference around there. And then a lot of the buyers get pulled from the surrounding areas, but maybe some of those metro areas for people looking to invest in property for recreational purposes, or maybe they just want to get away from the city and build something on their own, be away from everyone. But,
interesting. So you're not, when I initially heard land too, I go two ways. Like there's land where you're going to sell it to like a developer probably who's going to develop large tracts of homes. And then there's land where, like you're saying, maybe 10 acres that somebody just wants that to be their home. They want to get away from the city. They're retiring and they want to go out, or they just like being out in the woods somewhere or wherever I guess I shouldn't assume woods like we have here, but so is that kind of where you're doing most of your transactions, or those smaller parcels outside of a town, it sounds like, that people would maybe buy to build a house on or recreate on?
Yeah, that's kind of the sweet spot. And as we've gone along, we've been getting bigger and bigger on the parcels that we've been buying. Initially, I was buying properties, at least 2 acres was kind of my minimum. Now I really don't look at things under 10 acres. I've sold properties as large as 650 acres. So there's a big spread, but kind of the smaller properties actually are a little bit more difficult to deal with. Infill lots, they call them, because they only have sort of one exit plan. It's going to be a building site, or no one's really going to want it, because if it's an acre or two and you can't build, it's not buildable for whatever reason, then what are you going to do with it? It's going to be tough to really do much with that property. But if you've got something that's 10 acres or above, and maybe it's not buildable for some reason, there's still an active market for people that are either looking to use it for recreation or agriculture or something along those lines. Animals, all kinds.
Right.
Of
Oh,
yeah.
Good point.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That's cool. That's an interesting niche, and the direct mail too. I mean, I like to hear that, because that's our main marketing.
It's our main lead source.
Our residential wholesaling business.
Yep.
So many people, they get into try to get these really complex systems with all these like cold calling, texting. We do that a little bit, but direct mail is tried and true.
Yep.
Works.
Especially I'm assuming you have like a brand or something behind it that you can push people to and get a little bit of credibility.
Exactly.
And it's hard to beat that when that's set up well. So
and we
cool.
send out actual offers on the properties too. So it's a 2-page thing, and first page is kind of introducing ourselves and what we do. Second page is actually a purchase agreement where we've got their parcel number, the acreage, their county, state, and an actual offer price that we're offering them. Kind of a 1-page purchase agreement, and sometimes people just sign it and mail it back to me.
Wow. You're now the second person that said that. The guy that was on a couple weeks ago, he said the same thing. I wonder if you guys took like the same mastermind course.
Yeah, probably.
And that's what they teach us.
It's kind of a very common method, for people doing this type of business model. There's another method where it's kind of, I guess they call it a neutral letter, where they just say, "Hey, I'm looking to buy your property. Give me a call and let's talk about it." You'll get a lot more interaction that way, but the problem is that most of the time you're going to be too far apart.
Yeah, their land is the most valuable land in all of Jerusalem. Like it's like just the ridiculous. Yeah, I know we get a lot of those sellers too. That's fascinating though. So then you're sending these contracts out. How are you like finding these pieces of land? Okay, so you say you pick these metros, you go outside of them. Is there like a specific data source, or like how do you know that this is going to be one that we're going to mail, and there's a good chance we'll lock it up?
Right. I use a provider called DataTree, and it's a First American product. But basically, it allows you to build lists from there, and you can filter by all kinds of different things. But obviously, we're just filtering for raw land. No improvement value on the properties. Normally within certain assessed value ranges, because that court kind of weeds out some of the, really valuable or really unvaluable properties that might have issues, and a number of other different pieces of criteria to build the list. And then we just kind of, fire them out. And we're sending out a lot of mail at this point, sending out probably 50,000 pieces of mail a month.
Yeah, you're pushing it. You're doing good.
Yeah, we're trying to scale as much as we can. Earlier this year, I was actually sending out close to 100,000 pieces of mail a month, but I dialed it back a little bit and kind of just putting some more effort into cleaning up the list that I'm sending. So,
That's huge.
Yeah.
I feel bad in a way that I'm like, well, maybe we're just missing out on some of these deals, the potential deals. But I do think that maybe doing some extra efforts into the list cleanup, like I've been doing the second half of the years, is going to be a higher return on investment for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of a selfish question. As you were sort of scaling that, I'm wondering if you experienced the same thing we did. Did you start to find that basically as you were stacking on more lists, more data, and you weren't doing the cleanup, that your cost per deal was increasing?
Yes.
So you were probably making more money, but it was becoming more and more expensive to squeeze more and more juice out of the pot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you guys are the same thing. Yeah, it's like it still made sense to do the deal, obviously, and you're still making a lot of money on the deals, but it was probably going from 2,500, per deal to, maybe 35, 4,500, somewhere in that range.
Totally. Yeah, that sounds about right. That's like,
you're speaking our language.
Yeah.
We went through the exact same thing earlier this year. We started scaling our marketing to the point we were doing like about 40,000, 50,000 a month in direct mail. And we were having killer months.
Yeah.
But man, they was like just getting more and more expensive for every deal that we got up past that point. And we kind of were like, and it was more work. So we were like,
tons of work.
Is the true ROI on the effort spent really make sense when you start to get to that next year, right?
When you
and for some people it does, but
when you talk about data cleanup, I'm imagining with land, is your return to senders, do you deal with that at all, or do you just let that just go to the garbage? How do you do that to make sure that you're actually cleaning up your list of sending it to actual addresses?
I think that the mailing house that we use runs it through the some sort of cleanup process first of all, but I'm sure there's a lot of return to sender stuff that I don't see.
Oh, because the mail house takes care of it for you.
Yeah. Well, we're doing standard class mail, not first class. So
gotcha.
I think some of them do get kicked back, but they're not supposed to if it's not a first class thing.
Right.
Do you use Open Letter?
No, we use Rocket Print.
Rocket Print. Okay, I haven't heard of them. Okay, yeah, because I know Open Letter has a similar service where they'll provide, I guess, like the different
postal,
whatever, the postal rates, and like so it's like they'll facilitate getting the return mail actually for you a little bit, which is pretty nice.
Interesting. And then we just use like a virtual mail house, and so like when people mail stuff back and everything, then we get an email that shows the scan of the mail.
Nice.
Sometimes it's a purchase agreement. Sometimes we get angry letters from people that are so upset that we offered such a low value on their prized piece of land. So it just it just depends. So
okay, we need to look into that too, because we currently get it delivered to our UPS box, all of our return mail.
It's life changing.
And Dan literally has like $70,000 worth of mail at his house.
Probably more than that at this point.
From the last couple of years.
No, that's just from this year. I used to throw it away, but I was like, dude, I got to save this. This is some money right here.
I know. We've joked around. We want to make a YouTube video and call it like the $50,000 bonfire. Where we just like take all of it and we just burn all of it.
We got some good mail pieces we should burn.
That's fascinating though. So I mean, super basic stuff. I love what you're doing, because ultimately, and this is the thing with real estate, and this is the thing that we talk to a lot of new investors and with people in our instant investor program too, is that it's not rocket science. Like honestly, it is consistency using the same methods that are just tried and true that so many other people are doing. And I say it's having the gusto to be able to get through the initial period of like trying to figure out how to make that first check, and then getting your systems figured out enough so that you can have consistency in your success, whether that's follow-up systems, offer systems, data systems, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And that's constantly improving, right? It's like,
exactly.
It's never finished. I mean, you're constantly trying to get better with anything, really.
Yeah. And trying new stuff and measuring it. So like you talked about, when you increased your marketing spend and your cost per lead was starting to go up, that was a key performance indicator that you were tracking, that you recognized, and you said, maybe this isn't the right way to go about this. Let's try and figure out how to make this better. So you step back, and that is like the definition of being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
You identified a problem and you're solving it. And I love that. That's just super great. So what does your team look like as you're running this whole business?
Yeah, let's see. I'll go through my team. I built it up to a pretty good group now. So initially I've got, I guess starting from the very beginning, I've got someone that basically trims down my list for me, pulls the list from data tree based off of the criteria that I give them. And then they trim out different things, like when there's duplicates on the list or there's, clear things on the list that I don't want to mail to, say it's like owned by a railroad or a county or utility, something, places that will never sell to me. So we, have to go through a lot of that stuff kind of manually. So he prepares the list. I also have him doing some other jobs. I've got another team member that as soon as a response comes in, that he is entering the stuff into the CRM. So he's kind of our lead manager and also due diligence manager, kind of dual roles. So whether it comes in through the mail or someone calls in or wherever the lead comes in, he gets it standardized and put in the CRM, run some basic stuff on the property so we can look it up pretty quickly. And then his job also is like once we get a property under contract, he orders all the due diligence, orders a photographer to go out there. I've got another kind of overseas team that does some of the basic due diligence on the properties, calling the city and the county for, utilities, that type of information. But he coordinates all that type of stuff. Then I've got another team member, which we call our acquisition manager. And her job is as soon as the lead comes into the CRM, she's calling them and trying to get in contact with them, go through some basic questions. And then after that initial contact, then I've got another team member that is our property analyst. And basically he takes a look at the property, tries to determine if it's something that we want to buy or not, and if we do want to buy it, what that, where the price would be that would make sense for us. Because, we put offer prices on our mail, but sometimes it's kind of a shot in the dark. It's kind of based on what averages.
Yep.
And when we see the actual property, like we may be able to step up more, or we may have been too high. So if regardless, we got to set what value that would be. Like either that price would work that we initially send out, or if it's too high or too low. And if it's something we want to buy, is it like not landlocked? Is it not a swamp? Is it not on the side of a mountain? Like all these different things.
Right.
And then let's see, we've got after that, I think those are kind of and then I've got a transaction manager that as soon as the property is under contract, she takes over and she does all the stuff, coordinating with the title companies, the attorneys.
Gotcha.
And that's both on the purchase side and also on the resale side, keeps things moving that way. And I'm just pretty much at this point, I'm just kind of making decisions on where we're going to mail, and I'm, fixing problems as they come up, and also determining, like being the final decision maker on the properties, like if we're going to buy them or not, or like if we need to adjust the pricing or anything like that.
And you do close on all of the ones that you decide to purchase, right?
Yeah, unless there's something that comes up in our due diligence phase that was unexpected.
Sure.
So we'll always send out a photographer and a drone photographer and someone to walk the property. Sometimes there's some things that come up that we couldn't tell from, looking at satellite images and things like that.
Right.
And I guess the other important part of the whole process is we've got we always use like a local broker to help us resell the properties.
Yeah.
So we kind of incorporate them into the purchasing phase as well, because we'll send them over the information, say, hey, we're buying this property for this amount. Are you, what do you think you could resell it for? And, anything that we should be aware of in this area, because real estate is very local, and one neighborhood can be different than the next, or one area can be different than the next. So sometimes you can't really tell that from your computer screen also.
Very true. Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So I guess with that team, so it's like what, 8 or 9 people about. How many of those are stateside? How many of those are virtual?
It's about half and half. I've got my acquisition manager is here. She's actually from Canada, but and my property analyst is from here in the U.S. transaction managers from here in the U.S. Other team members are from overseas.
Nice.
Yeah. Similar setup to us then. I mean, your
it?
business
Yeah,
model
yeah,
is
yeah.
like identical to us, except for you're targeting, very similar.
Yeah.
You're targeting land exclusively, where we'll target not on purpose, but land as well. And that maybe leads me to my next question. I have two questions, but the first one I'll ask. Have you ever thought about doing your same business model, but actually looking for residential real estate or some other type of asset class?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've thought about transitioning, or not transitioning, but adding single family homes as well, or commercial properties. I'd love to.
Right.
I'd love to get into the distressed commercial properties. I think that would be great. I mean, obviously the numbers of properties are not the same as there are with land, but I think that there's some.
Sure.
Each deal probably has the ability to be a lot more substantial as well.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, potentially.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, and we've ended up, like, as part of this, sometimes we think we're just sending to land, but it turns out there could be a home on the property, and then we end up working on a deal. So we've done
right,
just kind of like stumbling into them.
So then also another question I have is about, like, how long, since you're closing on these, what is your average transaction time from close to close?
Yeah, our average hold time is 60 days.
That's not bad.
Wow.
It's not bad at all.
That's great.
We try to move them really quickly. I mean, the whole goal is to buy at an aggressive price, so then we can resell them at a good price as well, like slightly below market,
right?
And just move it quickly.
For sure.
Nice.
Yeah, we don't want to.
That's awesome.
I mean, I've had things that sell like right away, and we just got to wait for it to close with the attorney. Like, that's ideally what we try to do. We try to get it under contract within like a week or so.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of how long the escrow period is. Some properties take longer for whatever reason. Maybe we were off on the value, or maybe there's some issue that we didn't uncover during the due diligence, but haven't lost money on any deal yet. Knock on wood.
Nice.
But so we just gradually reduce until something sells, or if we identify an issue that, like, hey, people are having problems accessing this property or something, then we'll call out someone to do some clearing or do some other type of improvement and to make it more marketable.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess, that's your typical hold time. How many properties are you typically holding at a time? And, like, I guess financially for that, do you like have a base that you're using your own money? Do you have private investors? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm using my own money at this point. I did partner on two different deals last year, but so far this year, I've done everything with their own money. There are partners available in this business. I mean, banks won't lend on this type of thing, and hard money lenders really don't exist on this type of asset class either. So you're either, kind of forced to use your own money or partner with people on deals. And the way the partnership thing works in this business is, if you have a good deal, and it has to be a good deal, people will a partner will put up the money, and all the money for it, and then you split the deal with them when it sells. So you split the profits.
Yep.
So
makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good deal for the investor, really, because you're just paying for, the cost of getting the deal and everything locked up, but you've got no money in yourself, which is pretty good ROI.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you run into the situation yet where you have like sweet opportunities and you don't have the liquidity for it for whatever reason?
Thankfully, I've been able to balance it out pretty good so far. I mean, it's always fluctuating, the cash flow, and I'm always looking at it like what closings we've got, what ones that I'm going to be buying. But so far, everything's worked out pretty well as far as that goes. I'm trying to get into bigger and bigger properties. Like, I've got a couple of them buying right now, which are, one of them is $365,000, and then, I mean, I think it's going to sell for like $725,000 to $750,000.
Those are great numbers.
And I've got another one that's like $450,000 that I think is going to sell for $900,000 plus. So those are good deals that I don't want to pass up on. But then I've got to really plan out, like, I have these other deals closed, so then I can buy these ones, And if not, then I'll find a partner that'll be that would split the profits with me.
Right.
But
It's fair.
And that is the challenge with this business too. And we've talked about this a lot, is just it's always a cash flow problem, especially if you're, the other land flipping, house flipping, honestly, even wholesale real estate these days, especially because we face so many situations where we're having to help people find new residences or rehome tenants, things like that. You have a huge overhead on marketing, but it takes 60 days, 90 days sometimes for these deals to close because you need to help the resident find somewhere else to go, which takes time in this current.
Yeah, it's interesting. On paper it'd be like, okay, this one's going to close in 30 days. This one's going to sell in 30 days. It's all going to work out, but it never works out, and it's always kind of like, it always works out. It does always work out, but it never goes initially as you planned it.
Nope,
so
never.
You're always juggling things last minute, I guess, and it's not really that stressful when I'm at the point where I'm at right now, but like initially when I started, especially when I didn't really prove to my wife yet that this whole thing worked, I was like, hey, I need another $50,000 to buy this property. I need Then she saw it worked and the business model was great and everything, and she trusts me more now. So
that's the toughest group to please, the spouses. You got to prove yourself over and over again.
Yep, absolutely. So no, that's awesome, Pete. You're doing some cool stuff, man. I love it. And like honestly, it's kind of like looking in a mirror with how your business operates. Like and like I said, tried and true methods. It's if you wanted to go to residential or commercial things like that, it would be carbon copy.
Yep.
So easy.
Teams in place, the systems.
Take the systems and just change your underwriting a little bit, right? So I guess before we go into the last questions here, I'd love to just get your input on if there was someone that wanted to get into this, right? And they were interested in the land flipping, kind of what you're doing. What's the number one place that they should start?
Well, I've got this new thing going on my website, turningprofit.com, where I'm doing a monthly income report, which basically I detail out, month by month how things are going, like exact revenue, exact properties that I bought and sold, how much we made on each one, what went well, what didn't go well. So I think that'd be a good place to start to kind of learn what the business is about, like maybe what's possible and what's not possible, maybe some of the limitations you might face, but I think that's a good start, turningprofit.com. So
cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Reaching out to you. I can support that. Awesome. Right on. So just to wrap things up here, Pete, I would love to go into our last 3 questions. So we'll start with the group favorite of what is your craziest real estate investing story? And this can be a good story, bad story, big win, crazy cat lady story.
Bought land with Sasquatch on it. He actually owned Sasquatch's home.
I might own some properties with Sasquatch on there. That'd be interesting.
It would be.
I don't know. I've got a couple of really, really cool stories. I think maybe one that I'd like to highlight is something that kind of lit the fire for us on real estate investing. Getting started with that a number of years ago, way back when, I guess, is that in the first property that we bought as okay, we're going to flip this property, was a property. I think we bought it for $750 or something, like $750,000. It was in California here. It was kind of a luxury flip home before the real estate crash and everything. And at the time, the financing was so easy. We bought it with an 80-20 financing, which is an 80% first and a 20% piggyback second, you could close concurrently with that. And, they don't do those anymore. Not that I know of, at least.
Nope.
But it was so easy back then. And it was stated income and all this kind of stuff, very, very easy loan to get, even for that amount. And then we sold it. We closed on it. And then instantly we got approached by someone else who had lost out on the bidding for the property, and they wanted to buy it. And then we ended up reselling it, making it about $75,000 profit in 30
doing
days,
nothing
like that.
Beautiful.
Enough time to close it. And then after it closed, my loan broker called up and said, hey, what happened with this property? The company took back my commission because we didn't even make a payment.
Oh no, the loan broker didn't get paid. Oh man,
I felt bad about that. But he got a lot more business down the road. But I was can it be this easy?
Yeah. Yes and no.
It's funny. Lenders get weird about stuff like that. We did one last year. We bought it. we went to do our walkthrough after we bought it, and the tenant was like, "Oh, you guys bought this property?" He's like, "I wanted to buy this property.
Yeah.
I've been telling the property manager that for like a year, but he never relayed that to the seller." And I was like, "Oh, well, we bought it now." And he goes, "Well, do you guys want to sell it to me?"
We're like,
"Sure. Yeah, sure. It'll be, you know, we bought it for like 190. We're like, yeah, it'll be 250. He was like, "Done." Wayne got pre-approved the next day, did this whole thing. We held the property for wasn't long
60 days tops.
No,
30
not
days.
even. I think it was like, yeah, it was under a month because we never made a payment on it.
Oh,
and he went and yeah, I remember because we went to get the payoff and the lenders were like, we can't give you a payoff. Right. We haven't like put your loan in the system.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, that. But you need to, like, this guy's trying to buy
it. Exactly.
You'd sell this thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, that's a cool story though. And that probably sets you up to be in a pretty good spot going forward with that much sudden liquid cash.
Yeah, it gave me a ton of confidence, and just, I guess it just opened my eyes to kind of the possibilities in the business.
Sure.
You know, thinking a little bit differently, because we didn't even do any, you know, we were going to do some minor renovations to the place, but realized you could make money without even doing that.
Yep.
Kind of an eye-opener.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the goal for people is, you know, you get that one big deal, that one big opportunity, or like a big month, whatever that is, like that can be enough to change the course of your business and your life, right? Is it just sort of gives you that confidence and it gives you the ability to start scaling. But getting to that can be a bit of a grind.
Yeah. I mean, do you have another minute? I can tell you another cool story.
Oh, yeah.
That just happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we just bought this property, and it's a 5-acre piece of land, kind of in a major city on the Northeast. And it's kind of like a mini development property. So probably about, 15 home sites, something like that. But as soon as we closed on it, it was cheap. Like it's not the best area, but it's a developable property. It was cheap. I think $20,000. As soon as I closed on it, I get an email from someone saying, "Hey, we are putting a pipeline through this area, and we would like to pay you for a 50-foot easement." I mean, the property is along the highway, so in order for a subdivision to work, you'd have to have some pretty big setbacks from the highway anyhow. So we were planning to kind of not use this area that they wanted to put this pipeline through, and he wanted to offer me like $18,000 just for the easement. Yeah, negotiating. So I think I'll be able to get them up some. And I'll be able to cover the whole cost of the acquisition just from this
easement,
little strip of land, and letting them put this pipeline through, which won't affect me at all. So.
Right. Yeah. You gotta. Here's the thing: is awesome. I always tell people you gotta play to win. And if you're not in the game, those opportunities don't present themselves. And then on top of it, like you have to be open to other. You have to be open to other options or opportunities. When you bought that land, that wasn't even probably in your mind. When you bought that house, you weren't thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to try to flip this," but you were open to the idea of like, well, maybe I'll just take the easy money and run. I mean, you have to play to win.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Be in the game, right?
Yep.
Exactly. I was going to say, you put yourself in those positions to win, which I think is super valuable, and that's one of the things that holds a lot of people back, because they don't take that initial risk. They're never even in that position to win.
Yep.
So awesome. So perfect. So next question: what is one piece of advice you would give to a new investor looking to get started, or to a experienced investor looking to take their business to the next level?
Well, new investor to get started, definitely pick one model and just go all in on it. It's easy to, in real estate investing, it's easy to see how people are doing so well in all these different business models and everything, but you're really not going to have success unless you really focus in on one area, learn everything you can about the model, and just go for it.
Yep. So. Yeah, I think that's huge advice.
Totally.
Yeah, especially right now. Like, this is one thing, we talked about GoBundance briefly before, but I tend to knock on people a little bit in there, because so many people, they'll have like their syndication business, and then they're also like, well, I also want to have like an Amazon store. Oh, I also decided now I want to get into wholesaling residential.
Yeah. Oh, I also ice cream store.
Yeah.
Random shit.
Now the big thing I'm trying to do is like, they're trying to buy like small businesses from like mom and pops, So you have all these people that have had full-time businesses that are successful, but now all of a sudden they're trying to buy like manufacturing businesses or these other sort of things.
Yeah. And I get sidetracked on that too. Last year we bought a motel.
There
you go. Exactly.
So I'm guilty of it like anyone else, but
Yeah.
I realize sometimes when I do it, and then it's just a matter of refocusing and focusing on your core business. So,
and there's a difference between being opportunistic and taking advantage of a great opportunity and shiny object syndrome. But sometimes that line is super fine.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and I'll also say, when you have a successful business like you do, Pete, you have the ability to go and look at other things, right? Whereas a lot of people, when they haven't earned it yet, they haven't made real money, they don't have a business that's operating successfully, and they try to use that as like a way to elevate their own personal finances. Like that's kind of where they get in trouble, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
agreed.
Awesome. Perfect. So last question, where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you if you'd like them to do so?
Yeah, turningprofit.com. We're starting a podcast, launching it with my wife and I. My wife is part of the business. She's kind of the back end side of things, but she's a really good, she has a lot of good insight about things. So we're kind of co-hosts on it and just going to be talking about real estate.
Sweet. I'm excited. When does it drop? When does your first episode drop? Do you know?
Yeah, it's supposed to be at the end of this month. So,
nice.
Yeah, we've got a team kind of working behind the scenes on it. It's taken way longer than I wanted it to. But
everything does.
Yeah. So perfect. So that's end of November. So by the time this one comes out, we'll be a couple months into your show.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that'd be great.
Everyone should definitely go and check out the Turning Profit podcast, and go and reach out to Pete, you guys. He is a wealth of knowledge. He's doing some really awesome stuff, and I can tell that you're playing the game big time.
You're killing it out there.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks so much for coming on, Pete, and thanks so much for listening to everybody. Please go and leave us a 5-star review. Also, you should go to instantinvestorprogram.com and check out Dan and I's group coaching and mastermind program. It is growing aggressively here, and we have some people that are doing some really big deals, actually. I'm really excited about some of the stuff people have going on. We have someone that just got their first seller financing deal on like a 12-unit complex.
Super cool.
Just sick turns. They're going to be printing money. Yep. So instantinvestorprogram.com, guys. Go check that out. Besides that, thanks for listening, and talk to you guys next week.
See ya.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.